What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another Pro Tabletop video. We're going to be doing another faction rankings. Today we're doing Ultramarines. If you haven't seen what we're doing, go back, watch the Space Marine one. We're using that as our baseline. And obviously, before we get into this, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell because we're just bringing stuff to you. And if you don't like this kind of videos or you think that we're way too opinionated, sweet, leave a comment below and argue with us. Or just let us know what your opinion is.
We love to read the comments. Certainly, we have our own thoughts on it based on our play experience. So we're not the ultimate guide here, but you guys may have some great ideas that we just totally miss. If that's your army of choice and you play it day in and day out, and you're struggling, and you're like, you guys totally got it wrong. Love to hear about it.
Which, speaking of which, army of choice is Thomas's Ultramarines. So this video is literally going to be the fastest video. We have 10 seconds left. It's going to be a 60-second video. F tier. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll see you next time.
I think they're tired of seeing my Ultramarines. No matter how many different units I try to change it with, it's still blue guys at the end of the day. So, I mean, let me start off by saying Ultramarines, as far as one of the Marine factions, pretty good. I think they got a big boost in 9th. They were always pretty flexible, but they weren't like the strongest hitting. They got a couple things that kind of let them ignore some of the rules of 9th edition. That's really strong, like the falling back from combat and being able to still shoot. Nerfs to fly don't really affect them as far as shooting, and then they have strats to fall back and still charge in.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the other Marine factions have that too, but that's still very strong. And then just their Marines, I think they have 80, 90 data sheets. So just in general, you have a lot of things to choose from, and then just stacking it all together with all the buffs that Marines have, very strong. So let's jump into it. So defense, they're Marines, so they're going to have the base stats of Marines. Does making them Ultramarines make them any different? Defensively,
other than redeploy, I say no.
Yeah, that's about to say. The only thing that I think that sets them apart, they have a strat that they can redeploy 3 units. You can really put a bunch of units up front, maybe for screening or blocking or threatening, to control midboard from the get-go.
Yeah.
And if you use that role to go first, you're not just stuck out there in the wind. You can pull all those units back with a 2 CP spend.
Yeah,
so
it's really strong.
I think that's very powerful. So, I mean, in my mind, that's pretty big. Like, you can afford to be, risky in the beginning and then tone it back if you need to. And if you do get the first turn, now you're in a better position, whereas before you may have to play a little bit more cagey in case you don't win that roll. So I would get 1 more point over the base Marines. I don't even know what the regular Marines are, but
I think
we. So you think, but I think Salamanders were 9, right?
We did. No, we didn't do Salamanders yet.
Oh, I know, but in our talking, I think when we talked about it, I thought that we had. Like,
they can still be close. The base Space Marines, 95% sure I could pull it up, or one of you guys can. I'm pretty sure we put out an 8. So
okay,
it would give them.
So because of the redeploy, that puts them up to a 9. That's what we're saying. But do they? What about like for Feel No Pains? I mean, I guess they can get it from a.
Yeah, I mean, you have stratagems, you have the chaplain powers, right? You also have good psychic powers.
Against mortal wounds. Yeah, you have a chaplain, you have psychic powers, you have ways to block mortal wounds.
Yeah.
Natives like Feel No Pain you can get from apothecary. It's not really super relevant or super great.
So you get 3 wound Terminators walking around.
Mobility. So we haven't got to that point yet. It's crazy how that might change things. So mobility, they have a lot of fast units. It just depends if you put those in your build. But I think we're good for defense. Offense, Ultramarines over anything else. I don't know that it really affects them. The change to vehicles now, where they don't suffer any movement penalties, really takes away kind of the big buff of their super bonus of in the tactical doctrine. They don't suffer. They count as stationary, so it helps stuff like aggressors. But for vehicles and stuff, it doesn't. That they don't really. It's a net neutral change now, where it used to be like you needed that so you can make your vehicles move around without penalties. So I think they're just the same. I don't think there's anything groundbreaking in Ultramarines that you can't get outside of aggressors.
You say that, but I mean, I think Gulliman also takes into consideration offensively because of his damage output. I mean, not that we're worried about knights, but if a knight steps forward, or like Gulliman can bring it down, or if there's a big lug that steps up, he can take care of it.
So that's fair. So it's fair. It's interesting to play, because I play a lot. with Gulliman and try to figure out how to make a list without him because he's so expensive. And with the way auras work and the way character screening works, it really messes with all your bubbles and how close you have to be to get screening and how close you want to be to like spread out to get objectives. So he's kind of a plus and a minus. But yeah, I mean, as a single model, he's a workhorse, right? Like if he gets in your lines, he's going to do some work on you. So it's really, can you manage him?
So does Gilliman? I mean, he gives. I mean, yeah, you've got the full rerolls and everything like that, right? You've got all this other stuff. Does Gilliman make you go from an 8 to a 9?
I don't think so because you lose to get Gulliman.
Other
You
stuff.
lose stuff. Yeah.
No, I think he just goes to an 8. I thought it would be a 7.
They were
I thought it would be
normal
a 7.
Space Marines were an 8.
I think
they are.
it's the same. I think it's still an 8.
Then,
It's
yeah,
still really
it's the
good.
same.
I don't think it's any more than a regular Marine.
And then, do they have anything that gives them more primary ability
Not
than
really.
a normal Marine?
No, I wouldn't think so.
I wouldn't think so either.
Yeah, they're pretty much the same.
Same as secondary.
Same as secondary. Same as CP.
Yeah.
Because they're not extra hungry, right? And they don't have anything that makes them less hungry.
They're pretty hungry, man. They love CP. Like Bird has to be.
It depends on the units, but yeah. So
Bird has to be so careful with his CP because he has Gulliman, right? Like you have Gulliman, you have to save that one CP, so it kind of messes with.
Well, not anymore. So not anymore, right? You can't re-roll Gilliman's to get back up, so you're never saving
of course.
Of course. It's actually a little more freeing because you can why now I can use it on this save or whatever. If you're taking, it just depends on the units, right? Like I've been using Tempest recently, and they have a strat that lets them get an invulnerable save when they move. Like that costs 2 CP. So if you're popping that every turn, if you're taking a Thunderfire cannon and shooting twice with Tremor showing, which they've gone up quite a bit, so you don't see very many Thunderfire cannons that can use a lot of CP. But that's not specific to Ultramarines. That's just Marines in general.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, they have a Warlord trait that's Ultramarine specific that is regen on a 5+. But again, if you're taking Gulliman, you're very limited in your Warlord trait choice. You only get one extra Warlord trait for a random character, so you're not spending it on regen CP. You're just not.
Right.
You have too many other choices you want to use. So I think they're still the same. I wouldn't give them anything else. They're not using a lot more than any normal units. They're not regaining them. They have some good CP strats, but they're all situational, and it just kind of goes back to their list flex.
There's one other thing that I want to talk about offense really quick that I think we left out. So you have Gilliman, but you also have the redeploy stratagem. Would that not give them a tick on offense as well? Because if you do deploy super passive and then you can redeploy to be offense if you are going first, does that not make them also one tick better on offense?
Yeah, I mean that's a fair point. Like you can definitely deploy super passive, and then the opponent's like, "I'm going to give you first turn because I can't shoot at you," and then you're like, "Well, I redeploy all these guys over here," and you've miscalculated. Now they can get angles and just annihilate you with an alpha strike. That's very strong. And I guess we all need to talk about Tigerius. He's a top level Marine psyker just with all his innate buffs, so he gets a little bit extra. And it's very rare that you see a Ultramarine list without Tigerius in there.
Yeah. So I would say their offense and defense are just slightly better than normal Marines because of the redeploy and because of the couple characters that they bring to the table. Yeah. And then everything else has kind of fallen in line.
Well, kind of. So list flexibility. I think if you're not bringing Gilliman and you're not bringing Tiggy, just to his point, then you don't really have a good Ultramarine list.
Why play Ultramarines?
Well, I mean, there's some good.
There's the last time you played in a tournament with Ultramarines and didn't bring those characters.
Well, so part of that problem for me is I just don't have Calgar and some of the other characters, basic characters painted up. So I mean, I would have to do it.
He's tried though. He's tried.
There are some.
How many times that man got to let you down before you admit he's a floppy dingus, man? He's a floppy dingus.
You just can't use him the same way. You just don't have those expectations. He's going to beat something like Robo Will, and you'll be all right.
Well, and you got to think about what's his face? What's the dude's name? the chaplain's name. What's his name, dude?
Cassius. Just throw him in the trash. I have so many Cassius models. Look at the guy.
You can't even take Cassius.
But again, you got to go back to it. Like if you're building your list where that chaplain power has to go off, you're taking the Warlord trait to make it reroll. You're not taking Cassius. But if you want a cheap guy to get 2 and you don't want to spend the CP, like Cassius is your man, right? Like he gives you an extra one. He gives you some extra bonus rules. Like it's just an extra thing, right? So I don't know that it's terrible.
So does the list flexibility go from a 10 to a 9 because of these characters that you predominantly want to build Ultramarines around?
So Ultramarines are one of the few. I mean, they have a lot of characters. Like, they're the poster boys, and whether you like blue guys or not, they got a lot of characters. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them are just mediocre. But there's a lot of choices there. So I mean, just in general, tons of special characters that give you kind of.
If we give them a 10 list flexibility, and he's saying that he does not have to put Gilliman in it, then he's basically saying the next tournament he's playing without Gilliman and Tiggy.
Yeah, I gotta go to non-Gilliman just to show you.
And not Tigerius. You can't take Tigerius or Gilliman.
That's tough. I wouldn't give him a 10 then, no.
Oh my gosh, he's gonna take the point just so he doesn't have to play without him. He has solidified his fate that those two need to be in the list. We baited him into it, Damien. He has been baited. So
now I have to go play the other ones just to shut you two turkeys up. But we'll see.
I mean, I've seen. Here's the thing.
No way you can give.
Here's the thing. I've seen over this whole practice period of the beginning of 9th and how many battle reports we've done and practice games we've done. I've seen you create so many different lists, and I have tried to convince you so many times to put one or both of them out of your list, and they always come back. They always come back. It does not matter. He's like so close to a list without him. He's like, nope, can't do it. They're coming in. I'm switching stuff around again. Okay, we're so close to a list with Calgar. Oh, I got to paint him up for his tournament. Nope, Calgar's out of the list 1 hour later. Like, it does not matter. They're always going to end up back in the list. Yeah, so, and I mean, it's one of those things, though, where it's like, if you're playing a certain faction, there's going to be these certain units or characters that you just want to play, right? So it's like, if you're playing Ultramarines, like, you want to play Gilliman. You are playing them to play Gilliman to an extent.
If you're not taking the successors, I mean, you got to use the power that you got, right? Like
100%.
Right. Calgar, and this doesn't cover what Robo does. Like he does so many more things than just fight. His auras and his extra auras. Tigerius covers so many holes and gaps that you need from a psychic phase. Like if you're dealing with any kind of mortal wounds, you need some buff to your movement, or you need some extra liability and getting null zone off, like getting the reroll on null zone, because that's like a game breaking power sometimes where you have to do it and go off like +1, like the -1 to hit. Exactly, it just adds everything to it. So I mean, like he's so versatile in what he brings to the list. It's very hard to leave him out. I mean, you can't just take a regular psyker for 10 points less and be like, yeah, this guy's equal to Tigerius. It's just like close.
So that puts them at 46 points. So they'll fall right in A tier, right above normal Space Marines. Like we said, they're slightly better in 2 categories, in offense and defense, but they're just slightly worse in list flexibility. So they're only going to be 1 point ahead of normal Space Marines, which is probably what you'll see with most of these. Is they're gonna flex either up or down by 1 point compared to normal Space Marines, just depending on what extra stuff they have.
So we're looking at, is Eldar better than Ultramarines?
I mean, with the number of times I beat you, yes.
You beat me quite a bit. But I think lately you've been down on the Eldar train just because you've been struggling. So.
I know. I don't want to get too much. We went over that. We talked about why the Eldar are so good, and if you guys want to see why they are, go and look at it. In 9th right now, we're not seeing that currently. There's a lot of reasons for that, but on paper, stat-wise, and talking about it wise, it is where they ended up. Now, as we go and we redo some of these things in the future, maybe we'll find out reasons why they're not, right? So these are just our rough talkings about stuff, and obviously we're just going to keep this train flowing.
Yeah, and this is all pre-new Marine book, so in the next couple of weeks we'll see the new.
Oh yeah, like these Space Marines are going to go into like S++ tier when this new book comes out, and everything else is going down to F. Like, it doesn't even matter.
People complaining about Marines. They're like, why do we have to see so many Marines? And as the Marine guy, I'm like super stoked. Look at all these new units.
It's going to be Marines in S+, Necrons in S, everything else in F, because if you're playing anything else, you're basically going to lose your games. That is...
Oh my gosh. Get out of here. Get out of here. I'm so tired of people saying Marines are just easy win buttons, and I'm like, I play Marines. It's not that easy.
So that does it.
You have a lot of tools, but you have a lot of things to screw up, right? So
I mean, you definitely do. So that does it for the Space Marines. Like, comment, subscribe. Make sure you turn notifications on. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, especially, and how you guys agree or disagree with what we're doing. And we'll see you on the next video.
All right. Thanks, guys.